Welcome in, everyone. We'll get started shortly. We'd like to give folks just a couple more moments to get their audio preferences settled before we begin. All right. Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Before I hand it off to our presenters, I just want to cover a few technical details just in case you haven't joined us before on a webinar or Zoom in the past. So we do use Zoom webinar, which is similar to Zoom meeting, except for that your cameras and mics are disabled by default. To interact, with one another or with the presenters, you have two primary options. For discussion and general comments, you can use our chat button. This defaults to hosts and panelists, meaning only we will see your messages. But in the drop-down menu just above the typing area, you can select everyone, which will mean that everybody, attendees and panelists alike, will be able to see your message. If you have a question, please use our Q&A button. You can ask questions anonymously and can view and comment on existing questions as well. You can ask questions at any time, but please do note that all questions will be answered after our panel. And now, with further ado, I'd like to introduce Michelle Wei, joining us from Zanzibar. Welcome in, Michelle.
Thank you, Christina. Welcome, everyone, to our panel discussion, Modernizing Communication Strategy to Transform Student Engagement with Mid-Plains Community College. I'm Michelle Wei, a Senior Product Manager at Zanzibar, and I'd like to welcome our speakers from Mid-Plains Community College, Bobby Mullenkamp, Director of the Learning Commons, Mindy Hope, Director of Recruiting and Admissions, and Aaron Sis, Area Recruiter. I've been fortunate enough to work with Bobby, Mindy, and Aaron over the last year as an early adoption customer for our Zanzibar communications product. And Mid-Plains Community College has embraced the vision of what the software could provide for their institution. And I'm inspired by all of the information and details that they will share with you today. A little bit about Mid-Plains Community College. They have 7 campuses located across an 18-county service area in Nebraska, with over 50 academic programs with a 79.3% student success rate. Our agenda today will cover some of the challenges that Mid-Plains has encountered, as well as they're defining the communication strategy on campus. They're going to talk about modernizing their communications funnel, also some execution, some results and best practices that they've experienced, and also next steps that are they're looking to implement on campus. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Mindy Hope, the Director of Recruiting and Admissions. Mindy?
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, we are so excited to be here today from Mid-Plains Community College and just share what has been a success for us using this communications tool. I'm excited to say that we are in a much better place than we were 9 months ago before we started using this tool, but we definitely had some challenges. And like many of you out there, some of these challenges may be very similar. But what we were doing here was really very segmented and just not as effective or efficient as we wanted to. As Michelle mentioned, we not only have your normal interdepartmental communications and some of the boundaries and barriers that come with making sure everybody knows what's going on, but we also have 2 main campuses and 4 community campuses that are miles and miles apart from each other logistically. We actually operate as North Platte Community College and McCook Community College under the bigger umbrella of Mid-Plains. And so it was very challenging for us to communicate in an effective manner. And definitely we were having the best of intentions, but the way we were going about things was very time consuming and cumbersome. So we were honestly in our enrollment department using our own personal cell phones for student outreach up until we started using this tool. And we just felt like that was not in line with the level of service and communication that we wanted to provide our students and our constituents and even our internal staff and faculty. And so because we were all using those various tools, because we had some of those challenges, we really wanted to take a look at a better opportunity to communicate and then also to be able to track that. What we were doing before was not very user-friendly in terms of gathering data to find out how to move forward with our decisions. So we had a lot of challenges in front of us. As we began looking at our institution-wide strategy, we really had to take a look at who all was involved. In the beginning, I think each area kind of had their own plan for what they wanted to do and what their goals were, but we really sat down as a whole community college and started getting input from all the different departments and all of the different campuses. And we were surprised at all the things that we wanted to do and the way we were on the same page with our big picture goals. And so we had to take a look at all of those different pieces and kind of decide what were our challenges and what were our main strategic objectives that we wanted to accomplish. So as I mentioned, we were kind of all over the map and we wanted to make sure we were making really good data-driven decisions, but we just simply did not have the tool at the time to do that. We were making best guesses based on the output and then what kind of responses we were getting. And we're in a rural area, so we know our population pretty well, but I don't think we were doing a very good job of understanding how best to communicate with each individual targeted market. So we were looking at how best to reach our students on every level of their life cycle with us in a very relevant and meaningful way. And we needed to overcome the challenge of how to receive feedback and data in order to understand what was working, what was not working, what touch points were making a difference and what wasn't. So we were really looking at that goal. And then also the continuity piece is huge. Again, we were all doing our very best, but if you're reaching out to potential students in a hit or miss manner, because it's hard to keep up with not having a good communication tool, then those students are not going to feel connected to your campus. And the same with our current students. If you don't have good continuous communication, they may miss or misunderstand the services that we have available for them. And similarly with our relationship piece of this, if you're just reaching out to our alumni, again, on a hit or miss basis or not in a continuous fashion, they're going to feel like you just want donations. And so we wanted to make sure we were doing a really good cohesive process with a very good foundation of communications. We wanted to track that. We were, again, kind of doing our own individual tracking methods, but not anything that was giving us the data that we needed to make significant improvements. So that was one of the challenge areas for us as well. And then we wanted to make sure we were covering those gaps. So if we were missing the impactful information for students because we weren't communicating internally on what was going out, then we felt like we weren't serving our students as well. Or if we were overlapping our information, then maybe we were confusing students. And so we had to take a look at what our goals were. And then we stopped and took a look at what are some of the tools that we already have in place that have been working or not working. And we already really had a good relationship with Genzabar. So it made sense for us to move forward in this realm. As we continue to identify those goals, of course, we need to look at improving enrollment. I don't know about you guys, but enrollment is down here and we're looking at ways to grow enrollment, but we can't do that without retention efforts, without advancement and information going out to our alumni and our completers. And how do we circle all of that back around? And so we had to take a look at what were those goals for us? And we knew that we had to bring all of it together under one roof. Constituent engagement is kind of new goal for us as well. We'll talk about it a little bit later in that component of our communication strategy. But again, reaching out not only to our students, but to our business partnerships and the communities that we serve in our 18 county service area. We wanted to make sure that we were strengthening our message. So we wanted to make sure that we were using wording and verbiage that was beneficial to our students, that was influential, impactful, but we also wanted to put all of that together with the right branding and the right look so that students understood where it was coming from, and so that we were sending out a really cohesive package of information, again, across that timeline. So this can work from the big level of Mid-Plains, how we're communicating as Mid-Plains, but it also can funnel down into then how are we communicating from a specific campus, or maybe we're doing a specific campaign and we want that campaign to have a really strong message and a really strong look and a feel and a vibe to it that is going to catch the attention, so that the students and the constituents actually open that and read that and make use of that. We also were wanting to make sure we were collaborating better internally. Our student affairs teams kind of had their own agenda, and our academic affairs teams had their own agenda. And we needed to overcome some of those barriers of how we were partnering and how we could better partner in our communication plan, which led us to our strategic enrollment plan and the communication that was needed with that. So the nice thing about the tool that we're going to talk to you about is that everybody can be involved with it. So faculty can work within it. Student services can work within it. We can all communicate internally on what we're sharing with students, whether that's an individual student or a category of students. And it has really streamlined our workflow. Again, we were working harder, not smarter. We were not being very efficient. And this tool has really allowed us to just set up some processes that we'll tell you more about, and be able to walk away from the ongoing daily processes of putting it together and move toward the important functions, the actual communication, the actual relationship building with those students. So we've been really pleased with that so far. As we put together the process and the strategic objectives, we started brainstorming, like, how do we even start? Where do we begin? And so our group came up with the idea of these 3 funnels for our communications strategy. And if you've ever been working in the enrollment or the recruiting process, you know that we work with funnels all the time. So we have that big funnel of students coming in that we meet at fairs and so forth, and how do we work them into enrollment? So we knew that that was a good place to start. And then we wanted to make sure we were moving again strategically across all of the planes. So we wanted to onboard them and bring them in and make sure we were setting them up for success and retention and completion. And then, of course, that final piece, we don't want to lose touch with them after they complete with us. We want them to remain part of our family. So that's where the relationship funnel comes in. So we start with the recruitment funnel. And our main goal there was just to improve the prospective student experience. Again, we were a little bit hit and miss with what we were doing with our outreach. We knew we could do a better job. And so we wanted them to really have a great experience with them from their entry point all the way through. And so what's really nice for us, we're an open entry, open enrollment school. So students are coming in at different points throughout the year. We don't have those application admissions deadlines. So this tool allows us to reach out to students wherever they enter throughout the academic year and receive all the pertinent and relevant information that they need. It also allows us to track those interactions, like I mentioned before. This was a key component that we were missing. We were kind of shooting from the hip. We thought we knew what was working, but we were kind of relying on gut instincts. This tool gives us hard data to rely on. We can watch our messages and our campaigns go out, and we can see what's happening from those, and then we can maximize our efforts. So our team isn't just constantly spinning the wheel, reinventing the wheel. We're actually taking notice of those touch points that are working, and then we're able to maximize on those and move forward with those and build on what's working and not working. It's also a place for us to allow our different departments to work cohesively under the same funnel. So we may have career services, student life or housing, our early entry team, all sending out messages in the same funnel, but also we're able to kind of control and oversee that. So we have some of us who are watching that recruitment funnel and saying, this is all recruitment information. We want you to send out what you want to say, but we're all kind of monitoring how that goes out so that it's in a seamless manner. And so that allows us to keep good track of what we're sending out to our students. Under the retention funnel, the goal really was here to improve that student experience while they're on campus, or for our online students, and be able to just build those relationships and cultivate them early on. We know that students sometimes get in those first several weeks and maybe they hit some walls and some challenges, and they either aren't aware of the resources that are available to them, or they feel awkward reaching out. And so the retention funnel, as Bobby's going to mention later, really starts those relationships early, and empowers our students to be successful while they're here. And then our final and our third funnel is the relationship building piece. And this is one we'll mention again a little bit later, but this is one that we're just really kind of getting started on. And the goal for this is really to develop and support and build the future of Mid-Plains Community College. So whether that's students who've been through our program and have a career change on the horizon, maybe they're looking for employment or need help with that. Maybe it's with our business and community partners or our alumni. We want to be able to have a really great ongoing consistent communication plan for them that aligns with everything else that we're doing. And if we're doing it well, then that's really going to be a continuous loop. So as I said, we have a small population here in Western Nebraska, and we do not have the luxury of losing students over time. We know that if we serve our students well, that they're going to send back their siblings, they're going to send back their friends. If we serve our area high schools well, they're going to continue to send us, their graduating seniors. If we serve our community as well, and we provide the training that they need and the businesses with the training they need, they're going to continue to send us, their employees for more training. And for us, it's really all about that full cycle and relationship building. And we're just excited that this tool is allowing us to do that.
I'm Erin Sis, and I work in our admissions and recruiting department here at Mid-Plains Community College. So I live in the recruitment funnel. That starts with our very first time that we communicate with a student, whether it's at a college fair or a high school visit, and goes all the way up to like the day before classes start when they're here for student orientation. Once we learned how to utilize this tool with our training, we jumped right into it and started using it. One of the first things we did within our team for recruitment was to reach out to our students to introduce ourselves. And then we've continued to use it throughout the year, asking them kind of, where are you in your decision-making process? How can we help you? Those types of questions. We've also used the tool to create what we call call to action messages. So those can be things such as invitations to come visit campus, applying for admission, RSVPing for our registration days, and applying for scholarships. Those were kind of the big ones that we did this year. And to send out those messages, we use what we call data sets. And we have really taken advantage of those data sets. They are basically just a list of students that you want to receive the message. And if we can track the information about the student, we can create a data set based on that. Some examples were like, we have data sets for each of our enrollment coaches that are students that have visited campuses, and we have data sets for students that haven't visited campus. So the students that haven't, we were sending messages, hey, we want you to come visit us. Same with students who have or have not applied. We definitely don't want to ask someone who's already applied to come apply again, right? So we can filter out the students who have already done the step that we're asking students to do, and focusing on those that need to still take that step, but we can still continue to communicate with the students who have already taken that step, so that we don't lose them or so they don't melt away. And then another function within the system is the to-do functionality, which we've kind of just started using. And I know for me, I'll write things down on a sticky note and then I lose it. Or if I'm trying to remember what I'm supposed to do and I can't remember it because I didn't write it down, I'm letting the system help me instead. So this to-dos can be specific to a student or just kind of in general. I could assign a to-do to someone else. And I've used this to help remind me to complete tasks about a student. And I'm very excited to use it some more. And then within our first year of doing this, we've already been able to gather some results. And keep in mind, we just started training in July. So we didn't really start implementing messages, sending out messages to students until August, mostly. So we're still collecting a lot of data, but what we've seen so far has been really exciting. And we're really happy with what it's done. We sent out a campaign for students to come visit campus in the fall. And we normally get about 1 request a day to visit campus. And in a 36-hour time frame, we got 40 requests. So that's, as you can see, almost a 4,000% increase. That was really new for us to handle that many requests at one time, but it did allow us to be more efficient in how we set things up. And then we got those students on campus earlier. We got them started on the process and they were able to take advantage of things like scholarship application and other things earlier in their journey. Then also this spring, we sent out a text push, just a text message push, just a couple of days before our scholarship deadline. We saw great results with that. We saw an increase of 30% in our completed scholarship applications, which was the second highest amount of applications we've ever received since we switched to the electronic application 6 years ago. So that was really big for us. And then our registration days, we just started with our new student registration days in April, but we had a 45% increase in the number of students who came to our April date as compared to last year. So that, again, we're getting them through the process earlier, we're getting them committed and locked in, and then we can continue to keep them locked in so they don't melt away. And we've also seen a big increase in our response rate from students. Before we would send emails or call them and they wouldn't respond or they wouldn't answer the phone call because they didn't recognize the number. But we are definitely seeing that text messages are driving responses from them. A big one for me is as an employee, I've noticed an increase in my morale. So I would say everyone is also experiencing the same thing. I was one of the people who was supposed to send the text messages from my personal cell phone. It was overwhelming. It wasn't getting done like it was supposed to. Now it's a lot easier because the text messages, it's easier to manage the messages on my computer rather than on my personal phone. Getting a message in the evening or on a weekend, I don't feel like I have to handle it, mainly because I don't see it, but on my personal phone I did. So I can wait until the work week to address it. It's a lot easier to manage because we can also send out 500 personalized text messages to students at one time instead of having to copy and paste to multiple phone numbers. And then we found that we are saving about $500 per mailing campaign that we do. We are a small school, like Mindy mentioned. So far we've saved about $2,000 in postage on the campaigns that we have done via text or email instead of regular postage. So with that money, we can use that in other places in our budget, which is always nice. And then also during our first year of implementation, we have found some best practices for us that we're sharing obviously within our school, but also to our peers. So some of those things that we've figured out are we should only have one call to action in each message. If you ask them to do more than one thing, they're not going to. So it's better off to just follow up with another message later on asking them to do the second thing you wanted them to do. If it's an email or a text, the texts definitely work better, but we do still get response out of our emails. We use direct links in them. So if I'm asking a student to apply for admission, then I'm going to include the link to apply for admission. That way they get to it quickly and easily. Same with filling out their housing application or coming for a visit. We take them straight to the place that they request that. The other thing that we've learned is staying on top of updating our student information. So we keep track of high interest students versus low interest students. And as we're keeping track of that, we can continue to build our data sets and target those segments of students appropriately. For example, if a student tells us that they're not planning to attend here, we're going to put that in the system, and then they don't just completely drop off of our radar. We're able to message them late in the summer or in the fall and say, have your plans changed? Don't forget about us. We're still here and we still want to help you. And keeping that information up to date has really helped us with tailoring our messages and using our data sets to our advantage. We can really build the data sets to meet our needs and make the message to the student feel personalized at the same time. So again, like, don't ask the student to visit if they already have. And then finally, we kind of in Mid-Plains, but especially in recruiting and admissions, we've adopted the saying, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. A lot of us, myself included, can get very stuck on, oh, I can make this better before I send it out. And then suddenly it's 3 weeks later, the deadline has passed, or the deadline's the next day, and that doesn't give students enough time to do something. So just get it done, because it'll still work. I even selected the wrong data set one time. So I sent my message to the completely wrong list of students, and it still worked. We still got responses from it. We were able to update our information, and as far as I know, none of them even noticed. So don't be afraid of it. And then we're thinking 2 and 3 years down the road. So we're really excited because we've laid the foundation, and we're just excited to see where it can go after this.
So as Mindy mentioned, that handoff between recruitment and retention happens at the point of new student orientation. So once recruitment has gotten them here, we want to be sure to retain them. Here at Mid-Plains, we do a great job of providing academic support services like tutoring, writing and math labs, research help, mentorship, and study skills workshops, but we struggle to get students to take advantage of those. We are at the end of a hallway, so we're not a high traffic area, and it can be difficult to get students in our doors. In our department, we manage the early alert system where faculty report struggling students to us, and we attempt to re-engage the student through contacting them, sharing their instructor's concerns, recommending or setting them up for tutoring, or helping them to withdraw if that's what their life circumstances need to happen. We sometimes need to have tough conversations with students, which is difficult to do when they don't answer their phones. Students also do not read or respond to email very well. So we were looking for ways to better connect with students on the front end so that we're not trying to chase them down once they're in trouble and be the bad guys on the back end. And this, of course, begins with relationship building. Another key piece of retention is enrollment for the next semester. This last fall, our advising director initiated a communication set to encourage current students to get registered for spring classes earlier. Probably just like a lot of you, we have a few students who procrastinate and then want to get into classes at the last minute, which can be stressful for them. Classes can be full, and our advisors can be super busy at that time. And we can put flyers up all over campus, but when they get a series of reminders on different platforms about why it's to their benefit to get in early and how to do that, we see a whole different response. It worked beautifully. After advising pushed out a register now text reminder to 791 students, it really got students' attention. Within a 2-week period, 444 students registered for spring. Our spring enrollment for the 3rd week in November was up 37.4% from the same week the previous year. Prior to having this tool, when our campuses shut down for COVID in March of 2020, we wanted to be proactive with our students and make sure they were able to finish out the semester successfully. So we took our list of all enrolled students and split them among all Learning Commons staff, as well as some student life staff. And each person got a list of students that they were responsible for reaching out to. So over the last 6 to 8 weeks that we had left in that semester, we reached out to our students every couple of weeks. First to ask if they had been able to access their classes online. Then we checked in to see how things were going. Later, we asked if they were registered for the next semester. And finally, we wished them good luck on their finals. We did this through our personal cell phones or free texting apps that were all very separate. There was no way to track this communication or really keep any record of it. Now that we as an institution have implemented this GenSbar solution, we have expanded our previous reach out program to students into an initiative that we are calling Success Advocates. Each Learning Commons staff member has a texting number and a list of students assigned to them. We reach out to our students at the beginning of each semester and then periodically throughout the semester to build those relationships with them. Then if a student on our list receives an early alert from a faculty member, it is their success advocate that is reaching out to them, someone that they have already talked to or at least heard from and hopefully have a relationship with rather than us cold calling them. The Success Advocate program has been a game changer for our Learning Commons staff. They love interacting with students in this way and have met students in person in the Learning Commons because of it. We're getting them to come in our doors. We're making connections and showing students that we care about them and their success. As far as results, we really have seen students responding well to this outreach so far. They are requesting disability services, sharing struggles, or communicating about family health issues. And I think students don't always know the channels or take advantage of the resources that colleges provide to them, and then find themselves several weeks into the semester and completely overwhelmed. This tool is helping us reach students earlier. We've had an early alert system and other processes in place before, but this really makes students feel connected and empowered and sets them up to be active in their own success. We had a situation in the fall where a student was enrolled in classes here at Mid-Plains and then had decided to go to another institution, but had not dropped their classes with us. So of course they showed up as an early alert because they hadn't been to class. So when their success advocate reached out to them, the student said that they had gone to another institution. So then the staff member that was communicating with the student was able to make that correspondence visible to another department. And then they were able to step in, see the communication that had taken place, and provide the service needed to the student. Again, in a much more efficient and effective manner than ever before. It's just been even more beneficial than we ever dreamed in ways we hadn't even imagined. And we had pretty high hopes for what we were going to do with it. For best practices, engage early. Our new student orientation is on a Friday, which is a super exciting and busy and overwhelming day for students. So we actually waited until that Monday after orientation and did our first reach out. We introduced ourselves, welcomed them to campus, and asked them to stop in the Learning Commons to meet us. Second, engage often and make it personal. Erin had mentioned a call to action. That is super important in our communication with students. I always tell my staff to make sure we're asking them a question so that they're more likely to respond. A few weeks into the semester, we text our students and ask, for example, what is your favorite class? Or what class would you say is the most challenging? This can really help us identify where they may be needing some assistance and may not want to ask for it or even know that it's available. And again, on Make It Personal, we've had students say, oh, I'm sorry I didn't respond. I thought you were a robot. So make sure you sound like a real person because you are. And I mentioned this earlier, but a series of reminders on different platforms. The more they see it, the better chance they will remember to register early, or that we have 24/7 tutoring available, for example. This tool provides the opportunity to communicate what services are available to students and get them connected to those services as soon as possible. For global results, in March, we surpassed 50,000 messages sent or received through communications since we implemented the tool in July of 2021. In the first quarter of 2022, we sent more than 13,000 text messages, of which more than 97% were delivered successfully. We received about 2,000 text responses. Since implementation, our inbound texts have ranged from 12 to 20% of the total texts. And several of our text campaigns encourage students to visit a website, check their email, or call a staff member. So the 12 to 20% is expected. Our opt-out rate is minuscule at 0.38%. Twilio has not received any spam complaints in association with our texts. Again, I think this is because we really strive to make it personal and relevant to each student. We currently utilize over 80 different recipient data sets that have been tailored to various departments, including advising, financial aid, registration, early entry, learning commons, student success, business office, and community campuses. More than half of those data sets have been requested by admissions and recruiting. These data sets are both dynamic, so the total recipient number will change upon additional use. Plus, they have been created to automatically shift to new terms and years without maintenance. So as Mindy mentioned, rather than spending all of that time up front preparing the recipient list that you want to send a message to, you just create the communication, apply the data set, and walk away. And then you can get back to serving students.
So as Erin and Bobby mentioned, we have had just a great time growing in both the recruitment and retention funnels, learning as we go, learning that we really have just touched the tip of the iceberg on what the potential is. And we've just really had great success. And we're circling back around to the third funnel here at the end, because we are still in the process of really getting it rolling. And I think I want to share with you guys too that that's one of the really nice things about this process that has been helpful for us here at Mid-Plains, is that we've had not only great training, but support from Genzabar, and they've been really responsive to our ideas or suggestions or concerns, and really been very helpful. And that has allowed us to kind of take baby steps and move incrementally along. And so we're really just getting started rolling with our relationship funnel. From the execution point, our goal is to increase engagement and build those relationships like in the others, as we talked about, specifically with alumni and donors, but also with our business partners and so forth. We're using what we've learned from the recruitment and the retention funnels as guidance. So we have been setting up these best practices. We have been communicating not only internally with departments, but with our systems analysts and those who dig in for us with those data sets, what those best practices are and how we need to communicate to get the right data sets, and all of that. And that is helping us then build our plan for the relationship funnel as well. And then the data sets will be invaluable, just like they have been to the rest of us. So again, if we're wanting to reach a targeted population, we have learned to better implement that information in Genzabar to begin with. So using attributes or source codes, things like that in Genzabar, then we're able to use those to create those dynamic data sets that roll and move. So if the relationship funnel is wanting to reach out to our students who maybe weren't music majors, but were heavily involved in music while they were here, we're going to have that information in there for them to pull out and reach out and connect with those students in that way. So those are some of the pieces from the execution component that we're looking at. And then when it comes to best practices, again, we're really just building on what we've learned so far. So start small. Like Erin said, you might make a mistake here or there, but play with it and grow with it and just use it and get it out there. You're going to love the functionality of this, and it's very user friendly. So start small, build and grow. You're going to get more excited, and you're going to realize how you want to put the bigger picture into play. Optimize as you go. So start with those individual, more manual pieces, and then you're going to figure out how the timing of it works, how to create those schedules so that if you want to reach out to this group and then two weeks later you want them to get this message from this department, or 2 weeks later from this department, you'll be able to grow and optimize in that way. And again, best practice, as we've all mentioned, is coming back to making sure that that information is not getting to a point where we're overwhelming our students, that it's relevant, that it's timely, that it's beneficial for them, and then also works internally for us to best serve our students. For our next steps, as we talked, we are just so excited to just continue to grow with this. So a lot of my team's plans for the summer are working on kind of our strategic goals. We've got several days laid out for work sessions where we're going to do content creation. We're going to schedule out those messages. We'll be working with the other departments. How are we going to connect all of the different levels of the communication and the timing of that? We all have different sizes of teams. Some have smaller teams, some have bigger teams. So then we can work together interdepartmentally to decide like how much time do we have to put into all of these different campaigns and processes that we want to. So just continuing to grow in that way, continue with those targeted interactions, which have been very successful for us. Our return on investment in terms of streamlining our workflow, the use of our team's time and our money has been tremendously valuable. So we'll continue to work on how to put that into play. And then those pre-scheduled actions, we already have some in queue right now. So we have messages queued up to send out to our potential students for recruitment. So how do we get more of that stuff in play? And like Bobby said, be able to walk away and serve our students because the process part is already done. And then again, just increasing that overall productivity. So learning how to send the right messages at the right time to those right targeted groups is going to help us be more successful each semester as we go along. And we're just really excited to see how far reaching this is going to be for us based on the success that we've had so far.
All right, thank you to Mindy, Bobby, and Erin. That was fantastic. I'm Mike Sisson, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm here to ask questions. And we have a couple from Kimberly already, so I'll start with that first one there. For you guys at Midlands, so did you already have a texting policy in place before you started using Genzabar, or did you have to create one upon adoption?
I'll start. We did not have a formal policy in place. We had some general guidelines that came from our marketing and communications team. But since we started with this tool, we have put together an actual guideline with our marketing and communications team that answers a lot of questions and covers a lot of those basic guidelines, all the way down to using emojis and different things like that. And so that's something that we put into place much better after we started using this tool.
Awesome. And then Erin or Bobby, I don't know if you needed to add anything to that. Nope. All right. Her follow-up, or not necessarily follow-up, but the second question was, what processes or did you use, what process did you use, or what criteria were used to determine what units should have access and what level of access they needed?
I can start and you guys can jump in. You definitely have the opportunity to choose who can see those interactions. And so we have just talked internally. We have a core communications team that we set up to utilize this tool. So while our entire college is able to use it, we had that core group that is kind of working through those best practices and policies and procedures. And so amongst that group, we talked about, kind of how we want to do that. And so because of those funnels and the people kind of overseeing those funnels, that's where we discuss those things with the group and the funnel managers to say, okay, where do we want to give permissions and who should see these interactions? I think there's opportunities for that to grow and change as we go, though. But because we have those funnel managers and that core communications team, that's really allowed us to kind of decide where those boundaries come in and how that works. But Bobby and Aaron, feel free to add to that.
I would say it is for sure definitely a work in progress. We started out with, we don't have a lot of access to everybody else's communications right now. We started kind of tight and then we'll open it up a little bit. And we did have a previous kind of, with Jenzabar, we had a common module where people could see others. We have this functionality called Notepad, so notes about a student. And we're talking about moving in that direction with our interactions, but also being aware that it'll also plug up. If you see all the interactions a student gets, to sift through those and find what you're looking for can take a while too, or sort for them. So we are still figuring out how we want to best handle that.
And I would also add, as far as, of course, we didn't have a process when we started this, but we formed a team that we call the communications managers. And that includes Mindy and myself, our IT person who creates all of our data sets for us and is amazing. And our director of marketing, who wants to know, what kind of communications that we're sending out. Because we really wanted to make sure we had a handle on the tool before we just opened it up for a free for all. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't just for spamming, but to talk about those data sets and make it very relevant to who you're trying to reach, rather than just mass texting. So we will open it up probably slowly to other departments. But for now, it's basically, Mindy's department, recruiting and admissions, my department, learning commons. There's a module for advising so that they can text their students. And financial aid has just begun to use it as well to remind students about their FAFSA deadline and scholarship deadlines.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to hear. I feel like a lot of times a new system being implemented, it requires you to really iron out your workflows and processes in order to make full use of it. So that's a nice benefit to it for sure. And you mentioned a little bit there about additional units using the tool. Apologies to, I'm going to take a guess at a chagig. Please tell me how to pronounce that in the chat. I think you were in the last time. I'd like to learn. Do you also use Jenzabar for student records management, for communication with J1 or Sony's? Any other departments that are making use of it or that you have plans to make use for it anyway?
I went and looked at his question too, and we do use J1 desktop for a lot of our student records, and then we are moving to J1 web with kind of some of our different modules. So it's a gradual migration of that also. Was there anything else in that question?
I think J1 or Sony's.
Mm-hmm.
That might be it.
Okay.
Moving on to Reginald had a question there. Reginald, what has been the most unexpected outcome that emerged by using this feature?
For me, it's the fact that students thought I was a robot. That was really eye-opening for me. Like, we really need to be careful what we're saying so that they know we're a real person. That's why I threw that into my part of the presentation.
I think for our team, we were hopeful for the streamlined process because, as we said, we were using personal cell phones. And so, to go back and look, when you get a response from a student 6 hours later, and you've already been messaging 25 other students within that time frame, and then to have to go back and look at that conversation and respond in a timely manner and all of that, we were hopeful for how successful this was going to be. But I think we were truly mind blown by how just simplified and successful it is in terms of being able to follow those conversations and to be able to send those messages out that says, hi, Mike, because we've incorporated your preferred name, and we can, do it based on our previous conversation and see what that looks like. And then Erin can send that specifically to her group based on how she's already communicated with her population of potential students. And so I think we were hopeful for the success that we've seen, but maybe a little skeptical. And we've just been truly amazed by how well it has worked for us to do really good, solid outreach with the group.
Awesome, that's great to hear. And then Jennifer Burrell had a good question there as kind of a perspective, but she was interested to hear more about how you aligned your funnels to prevent overlap between the departments. So if you kind of talked a little bit about your communications managers. Did you have one group that helped to streamline that work? And as a follow-up, she would just like to hear more about the segments for the campaigns and how you split those out.
Again, you guys can jump in, but yes, that core communication team has really been communicating consistently since we trained with this tool to stay on top of that communication. And it's been a really good opportunity for us to discuss what we were doing and what we want to do and how to make that work. And so that's really helped with the piece of overlap. So Erin actually created a shared calendar for us, very simple, but we're able to go in there and color coordinate which funnel is sending out messages at different times. And then we've actually been meeting weekly ever since we started this with that core communications group, just to say what requests have come in from faculty or members of our college that are not part of that core group. What are they wanting to do with this? And how can we help them implement this? And how does that overlap? And what does that timing look like? And so we've been meeting weekly. It started out with an hour. Now we're down to about 15, 20, 30 minutes maybe each week, where we just hop on and say, hey, what's new? What are we looking at? Are we, in sync with each other? And that's been really helpful for us to not overlap, but also then to understand the college's big picture and the timing of what we want to do on an annual basis.
Yeah, and in addition to the calendar, I'm glad you mentioned that, Mindy. The IT person that we rely heavily on, who's on our communication managers team, created a kind of a request form online for anyone to fill out who wants to send out a text campaign. Just to get people to think through, like, who's my audience? What do I need to say? When do I want to send this out? Is it going to be a scheduled, like they're going to get a reminder every couple of weeks? Because again, rather than just making it a free-for-all and having all kinds of things flying around out there, we want it to be very organized and to make sure we're not stepping all over each other as we're all trying to communicate with the same students a lot of times.
Great. And I think you kind of touched on this one before, Erin, but Dr. Reginald Boyd here asked if this application integrates with J1.
Correct. This is, I'll jump in, guys, and this is the web application. This tool is part of our web application, but it supports both our web application and our desktop application currently.
Awesome. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions right now coming in, so we'll give people another few moments for that. Yeah, so if I guess I'll hand it your way, Michelle, if you want to maybe start to wrap up, and if another question pops up, then I'll jump in.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I'd just like to thank Bobby, Mindy, and Aaron for sharing their strategy and experiences with all of us today. I think you can see how that institution-wide commitment that Mid-Plains has by building this communication strategy has not only produced early successes for them, I mean, amazing statistics from an initiative that they just started midsummer last year, but it's also allowed them to start immediately to think about and build upon that communication foundation that they've already started. So I'm really excited to see where they go with the product. And for those of you in attendance, just a little plug about Genzabar Communications. As you can see, it enables you to eliminate those communication silos on your campus. It's helping you to reduce redundancies between departments and increase that collaboration across the campus that brings everything into a single system, that continuity of conversation that Mindy and Aaron and Bobby have referred to throughout the last hour. And if you'd like to learn anything more about Genzabar Communications, you can certainly find that information at genzabar.com. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. Thank you again to my panelists, this wonderful group that has been in partnership with us. So thank you.
Yes, thanks for attending, everybody. And I put it in the chat there, but Genzabar will reach out to you with links to the presentation recording shortly. It takes generally about half an hour for the recording to process, so it might not be till a little bit later on. But appreciate you all attending. And then Yolanda, we don't provide certificates of participation for webinars. However, if you do need something for professional development purposes, feel free to reach out to courses@acro.org, and I might be able to help you out. Thanks, everybody, and thanks to Genzabar especially for partnering with us and putting together this presentation together. I think it's a great tool you guys have developed, and hopefully everyone gets good use out of it.
Thank you, Mike.